Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to look at satellite imagery provided via the MODIS Today website as a way to predict water clarity for our fishing trip before we even launch the boat. This will save time and money for the angler because you will have a better chance of catching fish in clean water than you will extremely muddy water. So the date we're looking at is for the satellite imagery for November the 15th. It's a day or two right after a cold front has moved through. As you can see here, we have the entire United States. We have coastlines are marked. We can turn that on or off, and you can see those little highlights of the coastline go away. We can turn off state borders if we want, but I like having those overlays personally. The areas that we're going to be looking at in particular for today's exercise are the South Louisiana and Southern Mississippi areas for fishing. In particular, Hopedale, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Bourne, Shell Beach, and Delacroix. So if you notice, as we move our mouse around the United States, different areas are highlighted here in purple, and that allows us to zoom in just on that area. So I'm moving my mouse over Louisiana, choose that area, and here we now have sectioned out for us kind of the southeastern United States that we're wanting to look at. Notice that we're still kind of a zoomed out view, so we want to get a little bit closer look at this. And so I'm going to click on the 250 meter scale here to zoom in. As you can see, that really zooms us in, and we need to navigate to the area that we're looking at fishing. So scroll down, and here's the areas that we're looking at fishing and that we wanted to discuss. So first thing I will draw your attention to, this is the Mississippi River kind of winding its way in here and then dumping out into the Gulf. Notice the water clarity in all of this area here along the Gulf Coast adjacent to where the Mississippi is dumping in and where the mouth of the Mississippi is dumping in. The water clarity there has a lot to be desired. Looks like a lot of mud, a lot of sediment has been pushed down from the Mississippi River with all the rains that we've had. Notice over here, if we were to fish further to the west, we have a lot of muddy water here, indicating runoff from this river system and its tributaries here being pushed into the Gulf. But since this is the area that we're fishing today, we'll focus on this area. We've had a really brisk northwest wind blowing, and so it's real easy to see the impact looking at this satellite imagery on what it's doing to the water clarity. So the first thing, looking at any wind from the west, when the Mississippi River is up and it's flooding out and pushing sediment and mud out here into the Gulf, the west wind pushes that mud or sediment in this direction, pushes it to the east, right? The wind's coming from the west, pushing to the east. Well, unfortunately, as that sediment and mud gets pushed into this area, the incoming tide will actually take that mud and push it into this area. From the previous wind finder video that I've used to discuss this, you will notice that there's also mud being pushed out of the marsh. So all of these areas are really getting muddied up because of that west wind. If we were to look at fishing Lake Pontchartrain, for example, here's Lake Pontchartrain. You can see this southern shore has a lot more sediment or mud in this area because of these north winds really pushing and banging the waves across this shore and stirring up mud. If I was going to fish Lake Pontchartrain, I might fish in these areas here where the water looks to be a little clearer. The same thing here if I was fishing in the Delacroix area, for example. If I was fishing in this area, I might try to find some of these lakes and spots that have a little darker water, for example, than I would out here along these bays, which would be muddied up. So that's just an example of how we can use the MODIS Today satellite imagery to help predict or look at where areas are muddy. The great thing about this, if we look at any dates after a cold front and we see this pattern, then we can probably predict how the water will react the next time. For example, if you notice that the barrier islands here are helping contain a lot of this muddy water, if we had a means to get out there, we could fish on the back side of these islands potentially with a northwest wind, be protected from that wind, and have much, much cleaner water to fish in. So that's a look at the MODIS Today website and how it can help you plan your next fishing trip.